Super by Matthew Cody, chapter 27. Herman had the ring. He'd managed to keep hold of it even as Molly knocked him through a window. With it, he was no longer bleeding power. Worse, Daniel could tell from the way the ring flared and burned that it was hungry for more. The green flame spread out before it, licking the air. It was all happening all over again. The shroud was reborn. What to do first? Shall I gather up my shades, my wayward children, or should I deal with the last of my foes? You always sound like a bad comic, said Molly, sticking her chin out in defiance. She looked tired and afraid. She'd given her all in that last attack, and she was exhausted now. Daniel could see it in her face. If there was to be another fight, it would be a short one. The cracking of glass behind them gave way to shattering, and Daniel watched helplessly as a shade forced its way inside the house. The shadow creature stretched itself toward Daniel, readying itself to pounce. The shroud laughed. Of course, I'll let my shades have a little fun with you first. Let one problem solve another, eh, Daniel? Beneath the veil of shadow, Daniel could see this shade's face. It was the little girl with ringlet hair he'd caught a glimpse of back in the cave, her child's features made gruesome with loathing. Despite the monstrous appearance, there was something familiar about her. A blurry photograph on the edge of Daniel's memory. No, said Herman suddenly as the shade turned its face toward him. Not you! That was the old man's voice, not the crackling whisper of the shroud. He'd dropped part of his own shadowing disguise, and Herman's own face was now visible beneath the folds of blackness. He recognized the little girl, too. Eileen, Herman whispered. Eileen Stewart. In Graham's scrapbook, he'd seen a photograph, blurry with age, of the original orphans of St. Albans standing outside the charred ruins of their orphanage home. Among those grimy little faces had been young Herman Pluckett, looking so afraid, and standing next to him, her hands resting protectively on his shoulders, had been the little girl with her hair done up in ringlets. Eileen Stewart, Daniel's grandma. Daniel was only dimly aware of the sounds of chaos outside, the not-so-distant roar of a fire engine siren, someone shouting even closer by, but inside here, everything went as quiet as a breath. Graham was dead, but here was something left of her. A twisted shade of a little girl she had been at the exact instant Herman had stolen her away. Of all the countless faces, of all the countless victims, this was the one Herman would have avoided. Of all of them, she might awaken something resembling guilt in the old man's leathery heart. And she'd found him again. The attack was sudden and savage. Graham had been a gentle soul right up to the day she passed away, but this thing that the shroud had created was more animal than person. She'd said that the shades were drawn to their former selves or to pieces of the long-gone lives. Graham's shade had come back to the house she'd been raised in, only to find it occupied by the object of her all pent-up hate, her escaped tormentor and former master. The shade must have taken Herman by surprise because he didn't even fight back. He crumpled underneath her assault, dropping the shroud disguise entirely as she wrapped herself around him, binding him again in her own shadow. All he could do was cower beneath her anger. She put her hand around his throat and leaned down until her face was barely inches from his own. But there she stopped, and as Daniel watched, she drew close to the cracked pendant around Plunkett's neck. With a finger all of shadow, she reached out to touch the soft green glow of the meteor stone, only to shy away at the last second.